Hey listeners, welcome to the Pon Di Rock Podcast, a podcast about the volunteers serving in Peace Corps Jamaica. I'm your host, Alex Nash, an education volunteer from Columbus, Ohio. Today's episode brings you the second edition of Pancakes, Coffee, and Volunteers. I sat down with Emily Bergman and Matt Hubbard to learn more about their lives before Peace Corps and discuss the highs and lows of service, including site changes and the unique challenges and benefits of serving as a married couple. Hey Emily, hey Matt.
Hi Alex.
Hey Alex.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm really good, thank you. Did you enjoy the pancakes and coffee?
Oh my goodness. It's so good.
So good. Blue Mountain coffee, right?
Yeah. Only because I didn't read the price tag properly at Shoppers Fair. It was not labeled correctly, and then by the time I was at the checkout, it was too late, and I decided to treat myself.
The expensive stuff.
It's like
very
a grocery
pricey.
store 50-50. Like, is this the label? Is it up to date?
Who knows? It's a gamble. It's part of the fun, I think. I like to live dangerously. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourselves?
Yeah, so my name is Emily Bergman. I'm a Peace Corps volunteer from Kansas, and I'm here with my husband.
Hi, I'm Matt Hubbard. I'm a Peace Corps volunteer from Wisconsin, and I'm here with my wife.
What did you do before Peace Corps, Emily?
So I was a social worker before Peace Corps.
Yeah, this is Matt again. I'm a geographer, and I went to the University of Wisconsin at Platteville and the University of Kansas, where I met Emily.
I am an education volunteer, so I went from social work to now doing education here in Jamaica. So that's been really interesting to switch fields into something that I don't necessarily have a background in. It's been a very different experience. When I signed up for Peace Corps, my hope was to go into some form of something to do with social work or kind of that aspect of the work. And education is very different than kind of what I thought I would be doing in the Peace Corps, but it's been working out really well. The training was good, and pullouts they've been good.
Yeah, so I'm in the environment sector, and as a geographer before this, they seem like they'd line up, but they don't, because my job was for a telecom engineering company, so I was mapping like power poles and where things went on power poles, and now I have all this mapping experience, but there's very little spatial data available, and I'm going to work with my community development group on a neighborhood watch map of the community, but that hasn't happened yet, and it's going to be a lot of like in-person, on-the-ground data gathering. So right now it's mostly just the training and organizational capacity building and stuff like that.
So you go to training for your 10 weeks, or how long is training?
It was 10. I think 10 years. Who knows?
10 years. So you go to training for 10 years, and then Peace Corps puts you out into your community. As they say, you pack up your little pots and pans, and your supervisor comes and picks you up from the ceremony, the swear-in ceremony, and you drive out to your community for the very first time. So you have never seen your new home. You've never met anyone from your community. And you go out and you meet everyone, and it's kind of an overwhelming experience. And Peace Corps ended up placing both myself and Matt at a school, so we were actually sharing a supervisor and, in a way, sharing a job just a little bit at first. And I think for my job, and Alex, you're an education volunteer, so you understand this as well. My job through Peace Corps is pullouts. That is my primary project, and so it's easy to ask all the teachers what children are struggling with reading, and then you set your schedule, and then you just begin your pullouts, and it's something that you're able to do on your own. Whereas Matt's position as an environment volunteer looks very different because it's more capacity building, and it's not something he can just go out and make happen on his own. The community also has to want it to happen, and they want to be involved in certain projects. That it can't just be one community member pushing for these projects to happen. It has to be a full community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a big active farmers group is important to what happens, because that's where your connections are with individual farmers. The farmers group that I was supposed to work with, that would give me exposure to, at least in other communities that works like this, where 15 or 20 other people that have farms and do things on a daily basis, so you can go out with them and learn about the climate smart agriculture that works in that region, and learn about the things that other farmers are doing, or trainings, or get introduced with RADA. But when your connection is with just the school principal, you learn about the things that that person is involved with.
Yeah.
I eventually got some introductions from him because he did know some local farmers, and I made some really good friends in my community that way, but it wasn't what Peace Corps had envisioned. It didn't match with the community meeting, and I think they just decided that there's this, my specific skill set could be more useful somewhere else.
I think that makes sense, because for everything we talked about in training in terms of our role as Peace Corps volunteers, is the whole point, like you said, Emily, is capacity building, and we're not really here to create something that cannot be sustained after we leave, because it's not really our place.
Yeah.
So it does make sense that if you kind of go into a situation where there's not already an existing unit or organization within which you can kind of work and support them, then it'd be hard to make a job with that. And it sounds like, I'm sure that's not what Peace Corps envisioned, and I'm really glad that you both had the opportunity to find somewhere that's just a better fit for you and a better fit for your skills. Tell me more about your farmers groups or your opportunities now in your new community. It's like night and day in terms of organizations, right?
Yeah. So I work with an ex-teacher now, but she's the president of the CDC, which is a Community Development Commission? One of those two.
She's retired, right?
Yeah.
She's not an ex-teacher.
Oh, okay.
She's a retired.
Yeah, she's a retired teacher.
Okay.
She's a pensioner, as they call them around Yasso. And she's great. She is so integrated. She's the kind of person that they know all around the parish. She's also the vice president of the Parish Development Commission. So the annual meetings in the capital city, we go in, and she's an important figure there. She is on the board of most of the community groups. She's in the Senior Citizens Association. She's in the JAS, the Jamaican Agricultural Society farming group. She's the president. No, she's not the president, but she's important in it. So she has connected this web that my supervisor, Dan, likes to talk about. She is a connection to all parts of it immediately. She's a part of STIPA, which is an environmental protection agency in the group. She's active with RADA, which is, she's really well connected. So the infrastructure for community groups exists in this place, and it's really exciting. So I have a meeting with her every week. I learn about the community events that are happening, and I get to support those through the week. And I'm engaged with the school again, and we do some container gardening there to do some environmental lessons.
So we came into Peace Corps. We had been married for about 2.5 years. We got married in 2015, and then we switched sites about 9 months in. They moved us all the way across the island. So we spent about 9 months at our first community, within our first community, and it was definitely challenging because we were sharing everything in our first community. So we lived together, and we had a host family. We had our own little unit attached to our host family's home, and then we shared a supervisor. So once again, we were basically sharing a job. We shared a little room that we would sit in together. We would do everything together, because when you first get to your community, you don't necessarily have friends yet. People are still trying to figure out, what is Peace Corps? What are these Americans doing in my community? They're just not sure what the organization is quite yet. So we would do community walks together. So that was actually a huge challenge for us as a couple, to try to keep our own separate individual identities. And then just going from, we come from two very different backgrounds. We're used to having two very different places of work and our own friends and our own alone time and our own hobbies. And that just didn't exist when we got to our community. And I think to some extent that just doesn't exist in Peace Corps. As a married couple. So that's been something that's been a challenge for us, but we're working on overcoming that and figuring out our own identities again.
Totally. I completely agree with you. I think we both have alpha personalities too. We like to, run things now run we. But we like to be in charge. I personally, and this is something I'm working on, I love to be the center of attention, and I love to be like the funny, loud guy in the room, which is exhausting, I imagine, for someone that spends 24 hours a day with me. So that's some way I've been trying to grow, and that was something that was really tough in the last community. And now that we have some more time, I get some more time to kind of be myself and do my things, and Emily gets time away from the sometimes obnoxious parts of my personality.
Well, and that was something that was so hard because our community at first they got better, but they kind of treated us as one person because we were always together. We were never not together just because of, once again, the nature of the work, but because I was out doing pullouts, working hard, putting in my time, and Matt didn't necessarily have a cutout job at the school. He did get to be like the fun one who could go out and play with the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would be out like working my butt off, and Matt would get all of this like praise and credit, and
so much credit that I didn't deserve.
It was so frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to be the fun one too, because I think I'm a fun person.
Yeah. But it's hard. It can be hard to toe that line as a teacher,
yes,
and to set those boundaries and maintain consistency and expectations. Yeah.
And I had a job, and Matt, once again, didn't necessarily have something that was carved out and structured into the day like I did, and that was just kind of a fault of the whole structure.
Yeah,
but
that's the nature of my job, and you're supposed to fill that ambiguity with organization and partners, but because it didn't exist in that community, it left us kind of a little bit high and dry. But I do really appreciate, I don't want to be so negative, but my program supervisor was really receptive to that. That's one of the reasons we got a site change, and he specifically put us a place that has much less ambiguity and has a very organized, well-integrated supervisor who can champion her volunteer and has done so with several other volunteers. And I'm lucky to be where I am now, and I'm glad that because of the structure of your job, you've been able to get into another school in a good way.
Yeah, absolutely. So Peace Corps staff actually told me, when I kind of explained to them, the struggles that we were having as a married couple and having the exact same job and needing a little bit of space and spending every second of every day with each other, on top of all the stresses of everyday Peace Corps life, which is an emotional roller coaster within itself. One of the Peace Corps staff literally told me, okay, at your new community, you're going to go one way and Matt will go the other way. You will go left and he will go right, and that's how it will be. So now I actually commute every day to my school. I actually have a little taxi ride, or the other day I got to ride my bicycle there. It's a 4-mile ride to my school.
Uphill both ways.
Uphill both ways.
Wait, is it really?
I mean, kind of.
No, my walk to school is uphill both ways because you have up and down, so there is an uphill segment.
Oh, that's definitely the case. It's definitely up and down.
We're not lying.
Yeah. But that's been really cool to get to establish my own identity at my school and to have my school embrace me and love me, for me and not because I'm a part of this unit. That's been really wonderful. They've been really supportive.
You're not an accessory. You're not my purse.
Yeah. I was definitely every once in a while treated a little bit as an accessory.
Yeah. Accessory to the fun guy.
To the fun guy.
Which isn't fair.
Well, you are a fun guy, but you're more than an accessory, obviously. Yeah. You're both very fun people, so I feel you.
Well, and then, Matt did have the freedom, and he still does, to go out and, play football with the big men in the community, and that is something that women just don't do. And I don't have a background in soccer like Matt does, but I'm definitely athletic in the States, so I used to go around my community and run, but I would get all of this attention. So Matt definitely had an easier time being out in the community by himself as well than I did, because there were, male spaces for him to be.
And that's uniform across most of Jamaica, is just gendered spaces, and a lot of the public spaces being male spaces. They're not especially purposefully designed to be hospitable to females.
Yeah. It feels like a lot of times there aren't really a whole lot of public spaces, period. Yes, they obviously there are public spaces where people do things like shopping and everything, and those have a function. But it doesn't feel like there are always a lot of public hanging out spaces, especially in my community, which is not a bad thing at all. It's just, I think a lot of people tend to do their hanging out and relaxing in their yard, and that's the space where you do that. And I think that's very okay. It's just a little bit different than, we don't have board game bars, and that's okay. That's it's a bit of an adjustment, I think, maybe.
Yeah, and it's not a board game bar, but I guess we're talking dominoes and just
that's true.
Touche. Hanging out at the bar. And it was interesting because when they moved us to our new community, they moved us into a host family situation. So Matt and I were sharing this bedroom in a house, packed full of people. We were sharing a kitchen with a big family. Sharing a lot, we had no privacy. There was very little privacy. Right across the street from our new house, all the big men in the community play football, and there's a lot of men like sitting on the corner watching the football game, and that was once again another space where they were excited to have Matt join in, but I was never extremely comfortable being a part of that. Just once again the way that the gender divide is.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes I just don't always have a lot to contribute to conversations in some public spaces. Although, you know, I have my lovely bartender down the road. She and her husband are so sweet. As if I'm taking a little walk in the evening, I can holler at them and say hey and chat with them, and it's really very laid back, and that's fine, and I don't think that's a big deal since I'm not at the bar the whole time.
I think what you're talking about is your bar down the street is not a male exclusive space. It's a space that's owned and operated by a couple. It's got some gender equity to it, so maybe it's more comfortable for you than these football spaces or the bars that we have in the party bars.
Yes, it's not really a party bar at all. It's just a mellow vibe. Half the time the door is open and no one, including the bartender, is inside, and Angela will be in her yard, and I'll holler back to her. Like, I'll call to her and I'll see her on her porch, or she'll poke her head from her house, like, not at the bar, which sometimes worries me, but I mean, I guess it's fine. I'm like, someone could walk in and take a beer for free, and they would not know.
Oh, no.
But clearly that doesn't happen, or they just don't care.
Yeah.
One or two people will be sitting on the stoop drinking something, and it's usually someone that at least knows my face, and they know I'm a teacher, and they're respectful, and they say, yo, teach, and that's about it.
Makes you feel so good when they finally start, yo, teach, like,
yeah,
yes, I am a teacher.
Yeah, I'm like, thank you.
Yes.
I am a teacher.
Yes, exactly. In our first house, we didn't have any doors on the inside of this little house. This kind of little one-bedroom apartment, if you will.
It's
so
like a shotgun
it was
house almost.
Yes. Yeah, so like a straight hallway back into the bathroom. So we would have the bathroom, and then that would lead into the bedroom, which would lead into the main area with the kitchen, and we had a little couch. And so there was
curtains either.
So that was always, uncomfortable to have company over, because like you would literally all have to go to the other side of the house if someone had to use the bathroom. Or it was just, once again, no privacy. Like, we come in, we've only been married for 2 years, and all of a sudden there's no doors to the bathroom, there's no doors to the bedroom. If you want alone time, you can still hear the other person breathing because it's such a small space. So there's really no such thing as alone time all of a sudden, unless one of us wants to go on a community walk, and that takes a lot of emotional energy to go on those community walks, because you have to be so social, which is so good that people want to say hello and talk to you, but it's a different language that you're still learning. It's a different adjustment.
We were very used to privacy, and I think that's one of the good things about Peace Corps, is that it brought in cultural differences to me. Like, I thought that I didn't realize how just gung-ho about privacy American culture is until I came here, and I was like, oh, we have a ton of privacy in America, Yeah,
because the family that we first lived with when in our new community, and we have since moved across the street, and now we have our own unit again, which is working so much better for us. But that first house that Peace Corps moved us into, where we were sharing with this family, it wasn't really one family by American standards. It was actually, kind of several families combined. So they were all very used to it, and they were used to kind of like bathing outside at the pipe, and used to everybody sharing all the food and everything being communal, and everyone doing everyone else's dishes. And for us, that was very hard and complicated, because there was always new people in and out, new family members that we didn't know.
Yeah. Who are you? Why are you in my house? Am I supposed to be like worried that you're in my house?
Are we friends? Are you family?
You seem nice, but everyone seems nice.
Something else that's been hard, I think, as a couple, and Alex, you can speak to this a little bit more too, is it's pretty. I feel like within Peace Corps, we all just understand that it's an emotional roller coaster, and there's so many ups and there's so many downs, and sometimes those ups and downs can happen within the span of like 5 minutes. You can be like on your mountaintop, and then you can just go all the way down and like back up again, because something else will happen.
Oh yeah.
And so balancing those emotions as a couple has been really hard, because I can come home and I'll be on a mountaintop, and if Matt has had a bad day, then all of a sudden it's like the teeter-totter, like I come back down. I
don't think it's a teeter-totter. I think it's like a soggy noodle teeter-totter. It's not, very rarely does a mountaintop bring someone else to the mountaintop. It's just a valley puts the other person in the valley. It's like true. It's just, if someone's low, then the other person's gonna be low, because your emotions are very directly attached to the emotions of your spouse.
Yeah, well, that makes sense because, of course, you care for one another and want to help them get out of that space. But sometimes I think supporting others means kind of opening up that part of yourself that has been in that space as well and kind of sitting with them and being in that space together, which I think is really meaningful, and I think it's helpful, but it also can be hard when you're in that space a lot in a cycle, and sometimes that happens multiple times a day. And I think that's something that can be a challenge in Peace Corps service, and sometimes I go through those cycles multiple times a day or through the course of a week, and I'll think a month has passed. I'm like, oh no, it's been a week. My sense of time is really I genuinely think that my sense of time as a volunteer has really out of whack because of like how many emotions I go through every single day.
It's exhausting.
It is exhausting, and sometimes it's pretty neat to have the space to sit with those and for me to like evaluate them all, because I think a lot of times in my American life I didn't really have the space to process all my emotions as they were happening because I constantly had distractions. And then all of a sudden, the States, you kind of just go through however long without really sitting to think about like, man, how am I doing? And here it's like, it happens right away. Like I don't really have time to decide whether or not I want to deal with emotions. Like if they happen, they are present, and I'm getting better about processing them and being okay with them, even if sometimes they're not fun. But it's really exhausting. It's a lot, but it is also very cool, and I think a very unique opportunity to get to know yourself in ways that I don't think I ever would have if I hadn't come to do Peace Corps, And maybe that's just unique for me, or I don't know.
No, I agree, because I think we're getting to know each other, like ourselves and each other, in ways that we never would have known each other had we not done this experience. Like, who gets to sit on an island for 2 years and just like get to know each other in this really intense, like intimate way? We used to joke all the time too about how we're kind of sitting in a pressure cooker, and we're just kind of waiting to see, how we handle the pressure cooker, because on top of all the stresses, on top of like being together 24/7, and adjusting to a new culture, and having less distractions, we had the heat to deal with, and the heat has actually been a huge part of our service. It has been, every community Peace Corps has placed us in has been so hot, and that's actually been one of our most common challenges, I think, for us as a couple, because neither of us are doing a great job handling the heat. And I would say especially your body just wasn't created to handle this hot climate.
I'm a furnace. I run hot all the time, and I'm from Wisconsin, and I just, because I have an air conditioning, our summers get hot, but it's not like this. It's a stifling heat. It feels like we have this one gas station in our community, because we live in a pretty big town, that's air conditioned. And when I walk in, oh gosh, it's like a literal weight comes off my shoulders, and I'm just like, what? How did I exist before I was in this store? And then you have to go buy your things, and like, oh, I have to go back out into it and just sort of like crush myself down again into this sweaty little golem of a creature and get through it. It's stressful.
Yeah, I remember when I visited you, I was so tired, and I think when I'm really hot, and especially after a travel day, I'm just like kind of cranky and like not running on 100%. And I'm just a little bit like dazed.
Yes.
And I remember as soon as we stepped into that gas station, I'm like, oh, I'm a person again. And then we walked outside and like, and walked like it wasn't even 10 minutes to your house. And by the time we got to your house, I only had energy to like sit in front of your fan for like 5 minutes.
There have definitely been afternoons where we're both just so annoyed, like we're just agitated, and it takes one of us to all of a sudden realize, oh, I think we're hot. And then like, so cooling down has become somewhat of a hobby for us. We have all sorts of strategies, and it's like a whole regimen to cool yourself down. You have to like get the fan right. You have to, we are lucky. We are in a community where we have pretty consistent not air conditioning. Electricity. We have pretty consistent electricity. So we do have those fans, and we put like wet washcloths in the fridge, and we'll put them on us, or we'll like, we'll rinse off in the cold water, or there's just so many things that we have to do for ourselves that we didn't ever have to think about in the States. And it's affected us on all levels. Like, we've both lost a lot of weight from the heat.
Yeah.
We're always dehydrated.
Yeah.
Headache.
Yeah.
Covered in sweat.
Yeah.
Because if you're gonna like stay cool, it's too hot. It's 93 degrees and it's 90% humidity, so you are sweating.
Yep.
And you put the fan on you because it's the only way to survive, but it's sucking off all that sweat right away, so you don't know that you're getting dry, but you're drying out like a sponge in the sun all day long. And
that fan is just hot air.
Yeah.
It's not even really that cool. It's just like moving the air, which helps. It does help quite a bit. But yeah.
Oh man. So that's been really interesting too, to get to know each other on that level. Like, what does my partner need in this moment? Like, why is he so grumpy right now? He needs water. Maybe he needs, this and that. And
we're just like houseplants with more complicated emotions. Right?
Water and shade.
Shade. Do you have any advice for couples considering Peace Corps?
So I definitely feel like, despite all of the rocky moments, we now, all of a sudden, I feel like we have our own language because we've spent so much time together. We have so many like inside jokes and just so many weird things that we do on a daily basis. That's just kind of like us stuff that we've developed because for the last, 14, 15 months, we've been just in constant conversation. We joke that it's like it's at the never ending conversation because we're always in the same room together and there's so much togetherness and we've just experienced so much together. And I mean, the Peace Corps, it's 2 years, which in the grand scheme of things isn't that long, but the last 15 months feels like 20 years. Like, I feel like I've been married to this man for like 20, 30 years now. Not in a bad way, in a good way, but
yeah, but it's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's more than you expect.
Yeah.
Totally. I agree. I think that I've had to grow a lot, and it's making me definitely like a more supportive and better partner. I think I had the privilege and space to be a little bit of a self-centered person back in America, and then you'll die. You can't do that here. You're not fulfilling your role. You're not supporting your partner if you get too focused on yourself. So it's helped me be a little bit more introspective in knowing like what I think and why I think those things, because I need to do that to be able to create the space to support you through the process. So I definitely think it's improved me as a person and our relationship. I really am thankful for that. I know our country officially does not accept couples that are in the same sector, so maybe we'll start seeing less and less of them.
Really?
It's in the application now.
Oh, they changed it.
They did change it because there were 2 years ago we had a couple both in education.
I was looking at the environment job posting the other day on the Peace Corps website.
You want to apply?
Yeah, it's
But I think there's similar experiences to other countries as well.
Yeah, of course.
So I've read a lot of blogs written by couples, and that's actually really helped because our experience is kind of unique. There is one other couple in the Peace Corps, but everybody else are single volunteers, and they can all relate on the struggles that they're dealing with. But our perspective of Peace Corps is different than the majority of Peace Corps volunteers serving as a couple. So reading some blogs and kind of normalizing that our highs are so high and our lows are so low, and that it's like actually okay to have more disagreements in the Peace Corps than you would have back home because you're spending so much more time with each other and you have so much more pressure and it's just so hot outside. And that's okay. And my advice to couples thinking about serving in the Peace Corps together is definitely, sticking with it, because the training was really hard for us. The first few months were really hard for us, and we're really evening out at this point. We've been able to kind of find our niches, and we're hitting some really positive beats, and we're really enjoying Jamaica and enjoying our time in the Peace Corps. But it took a long time for us to get here. And so that would be my advice is, just stick it out even when times are rough. And my other advice would be to work really hard to carve out those times for yourself, even if it's just putting in some headphones. You might still be sitting next to your partner, but sometimes putting in some headphones or watching a show that your partner's not watching, like while he reads a book, something along those lines can really help create the illusion that you're able to get some alone time and spend some time with yourself. Yeah, absolutely. That's good advice. I'm going to give advice on how you approach other volunteers, because I think there's 27 people in our group on the island, and 23 of them aren't married, although several of them are in relationships with people back home or with other volunteers or host country nationals.
but they are going to picture your relationship as this kind of like built-in support system. They're going to see a lot of the good things that is being married or in a committed relationship and serving with your partner in the Peace Corps, and just be prepared to explain those things, and also just be comfortable knowing that your reality is going to be also the moments that are private and difficult, and that's okay. Emily talked about that earlier. There's a lot of pressure. You're in a pressure cooker, and you're going to have moments where communication breaks down and society treats someone unfairly, and that's just the way it's going to be, and it sucks. But if you know yourself and you know your partner, then and you communicate, you'll be able to get through anything
And come out even more in love and stronger on the other end.
Yeah. And just because they're alone in their community doesn't mean that they can't like have a relationship with you. They can still call you. You can still be friends. You can support them over the phone. Alex, I know that's something that you're really good at with peer support networks. So just because they're the only person in their house doesn't mean that they don't have a support system. They can get one.
It's definitely a different perspective, but I know I've never for a second thought that anything here was easier for you two because you have each other. I know, because I know they're just, everyone's challenges are unique, especially, and even just from site to site, as we all know.
There are definitely benefits to being as a couple as well, like a lot of benefits. We are able to play board games and have conversations all the time, and it's really nice to have that company, but there's also challenges. There's both.
We specifically chose to bring a lot of things to do as a couple. We brought instruments to learn, and we brought board games to play, and we brought books to read.
Painting,
and always a fun idea. There's a lot of little activities you can pack into your suitcases that'll stretch the distance that are going to be hard to get in your host country, like watercolors.
Thank you so much for coming to visit me, because I know it took a really long time for you to get here. I'm really pleased that you came out to see me.
7 hours.
Well, we love you dearly.
Aww,
it's always a pleasure to see you.
That's our show. Thanks for listening to the Pon Di Rock Podcast. Special thanks to my wonderful guests, Emily Bergman and Matt Hubbard, for traveling 7 hours just to see me and eat some pancakes. And, as always, thanks to the Peace Corps Jamaica social media team for their support and shenanigans. If you like what you've heard so far, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and tell your friends. New episodes are posted on the third Friday of every month. To learn more about Peace Corps Jamaica, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and at peacecorps.gov/Jamaica. Bye!